You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Mighty Blue podcast. Since we last got together, Nuke and I have taken a zero and hiked just 2 10 or 11 mile days as the White Mountains have hit us with punishing ascents and descents. I knew this would happen, but even I've been surprised at how unachievable those longer days have quickly become. We've also stayed in one of the legendary AMC huts at Lake of the Clouds and have the worst downhill from my memory down to the Osgood tent site in our rear view mirror. Despite the lack of miles then, it's been another great couple of days. But before we get into it, let's hear from our sponsor, Polar Steps. If you're heading out on a long hike this year, which I am, I've got something I think you're going to love. It's called Polar Steps. It's a travel tracking app that's going to become a favourite with hikers. You set your start date, let it run quietly in the background, and it maps your entire journey automatically, all on your own beautiful spinning 3D globe. And don't worry, the tracking feature uses about 4% of your battery on a single charge, so it's not going to kill your phone when you're out there. You can add photos and short journal entries as you go, so your map shows you where you were and your words remind you of what that day actually felt like. There's a light social layer too. Family and friends can follow along, or you can keep it completely private. As every hiker says, hike your own hike. And when you're done, you can relive the whole thing in the app or turn it into a stunning coffee table book with your route, stats, photos and stories. And did I tell you that it's entirely free to download and use? The only time you'll be paying anything is if you decide to turn your trip into a book. That's Polar Steps. Track it now, treasure it forever. Day 133, which was Sunday. And I'm trying to recall this outside the Libby house in Gorham. So bear with me with the traffic, see how it goes. This Sunday was a 0 day at Mike's house. So the past week has totaled just 58.5 miles, a 21.5 mile deficit on our 80 miles a week target, reducing our existing credit to 64.5 miles credit. That means we've got about 80% of a week, which is about 5.5 days in credit against my 30th of September projected finish. Nuke still needs to go a little bit faster than this, so I don't know how we're going to work that out because the mileage through the Whites has definitely fallen off. That morning, we didn't have to rush up at all. Jennifer made pancakes with blueberries, which were fantastic. And then Jennifer and Mike went out canoeing while Nuke and I drove Jennifer's car into Littleton for resupply. It's funny, actually, I haven't driven a car now for several months. And firstly, it was very nice of her to trust me to do it. And secondly, I wasn't terribly comfortable doing it. You know, you kind of get used to driving a car and then you get used to not driving a car. And I literally, it was the first time for a couple of months I'd driven. And in Littleton, we went into a place called, I think it was Lahoots, an outdoor shop where there were some really good freeze-dried meals stocked up. So I got a bunch of those and headed over to, sorry Jennifer, Sow's Tavern for a brunch, a second breakfast in other words. And I don't know if you remember, I told you that I got my hair cut back in Lee, I think it was, Massachusetts, and they did not clean up my eyebrows or my hair from my ears or nose. Well, I found an open salon and I went in and they sorted out my eyebrows and my ear hair, which was pretty nice of them. So we got that sorted out. When we got back to Mike's to put the podcast together, and Jennifer unfortunately had to go back to DC. You know, once they got home, she had to leave. And we went out, 3 of us in the evening, went to a local brewery where we treated Mike to dinner for all his kindnesses. And then we found a place called the Super Secret Ice Cream, which is kind of a weird name. And no, we walked in and it was beautiful ice cream, by the way. And who was serving at the counter? Bluebird. It was so nice to see her. You know, we'd had dinner a couple of nights before. And after her shift was over, we all chatted outside and headed back. So it was a really nice 0 day. And I always feel the benefit of a 0 day, just taking that time away from the hike does just revitalizes you and makes you ready for the next day. And we certainly needed to be ready for that because we were going to be climbing up to the Lake of the Clouds hut and eventually to Mount Washington. Day number 134, which was Monday, US Route 302 or Crawford Notch, mile 1852.5 to Lake of the Clouds hut, mile 1863.4, a 10.9 mile epic day. Mike dropped us back off at Crawford Notch for our biggest climb of the day, though the whole day was pretty much of a climb with over 5,000 feet, maybe just under 5,000 feet of elevation gain over just over 10 miles. There was a forecast of rain. We were expecting it at about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and we weren't sure, whether it was going to come in or not. We always keep checking the radar when we're getting ready for these hikes. But we did have a great start actually. We got lost on the climb up from Crawford Notch. There is definitely a lack of blazes in New Hampshire. Not complaining, but you can find your way, and certainly by having far out, you can really find you can keep on the path, at least you know where you are. But at one stage, me, Nuke, and another bloke were on 3 separate. Well, we weren't on trails. We were trying to find a trail. And eventually, we were calling out to each other. And eventually, we found the trail and carried on up. But it was quite tricky to work your way through, especially when it's on quite a steep hill. And it was steep straight away. But 2 miles and 1,700 feet higher, we were at Webster Cliffs. And if you've never been there, Webster Cliffs is just this spectacular rocky outcropping overlooking all of Crawford Notch and down the valley. It really is one of the beautiful views, one of the ones I really remember from 2014 and 2019. Special place, every time to go there. But once we carried on and up the top of Mount Webster, there were more and more views as we got higher, also on more rocky outcrops, but not as dramatic as the one at Webster Cliffs itself. So then we got, as I say, we got to the top of Webster and we had our, I guess, flattest part of the day, although it wasn't in the least bit flat, but it was certainly not going up in the rate at which it had been going before. And after a few more miles, we got to the Mizpah hut for soup, coffee, bread, and calorie-rich baked goods. Basically anything they sell us that had calories in it. By now we're just eating so damn much. And we'd actually booked a hut on this day. Lake of the Clouds is a pretty famous hut, I suppose, probably one of the more famous on the AT. And we just didn't know where we could camp otherwise. We could have stayed in the dungeon, which is a dank, dark place with bunks, which only had 2 occupants that night. And I don't know how much they charge you, but we don't get any food or anything like that. So we didn't really fancy the dungeon. And we didn't think for 1 minute we get work for stay. Work for stay is where you turn up at the hut at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and offer to do some work, and then you work for 2 hours and they give you some food, some scraps. But you can only go to bed. And by the way, a bed is, they'll give you a place on the floor after everybody's gone to bed. So really it is a bit of a pain in the neck, to be honest with you. So we decided we were going to book that hut, and we were very glad we did in the end. From Mizpah, there was another climb up Mount Pierce that left us at or above tree line for most of the rest of the day. Of course, that is when the rain chose to start. Happily, it didn't last all that long, and it never really set in too much. Fortunately, most fortunately of all, the promised thunderstorm didn't occur. So the rest of the afternoon was spent with the threat of rain and occasional splatters and really dramatic gusts of wind blowing the whole top of the mountain around. It's just beautiful up there. And the rest of the day was spent approaching Lake of the Clouds hut as we pushed ever upward. Then we came over a crest, and I remember this from previously. I could see the hut ahead and just below us. Both of us were so pleased with how we'd met the challenge that day. We felt accomplished by the feat. I say it was one of my favourite hiking days on trail, bringing back so many happy memories of previous through hikes. And I've used the word accomplished on a number of times to do with hiking, but it was Nuke who actually mentioned it. He felt accomplished by it as well, and we both did. At the hut, we met up with Breadcrumbs, Real Estate and Crash, who were staying there, along with, and this was a big surprise, Yard Sale and Crazy Hair from the Lookout Hostel in Pennsylvania. There were great hosts there, and we stayed there a couple of nights. The hut accommodations are Spartan, very Spartan, with a bunk bed, no showers, no electricity, but dinner and breakfast is included. And while it's quite expensive, to get dinner and breakfast cooked for you is a real bonus, and probably needs to be considered when you're thinking about getting a hut. You get a 20% discount on the hiker through pass, which is well worth it. You get a discount on all your tent stays on the hiker through pass as well. But you can actually stay at the huts for 20% off, and that's saving you about 30 or 40 bucks. But the kind of mini highlight for me of dinner was that Mike, our generous host these past few nights, turned up on one of his runs, don't know how he's running there, to give Nuke a sandwich he'd left in the fridge and a bottle of Moxie. Now that is Moxie in itself. It was so good to be eating family style and getting to know our friends better just by chatting with them. We're all getting ready though for Washington the following day. Day number 135, which was Tuesday, Lake of the Clouds Hut, mile 1863.4 to Osgood Tent Site, mile 1873.4. An absolutely knee-jarring 10-mile day. The following morning, I woke to my alarm and just lay back down. Breakfast wasn't going to be served for a couple of hours, at 7 I think, while coffee would be available by 6. Naturally enough, I fell back to sleep. Getting up at 6:15, I grabbed a coffee and gravitated towards the picture window that stared up at Mount Washington. It was bathed in sunlight, with no clouds in sight. What a treat. The previous October rather, Dana and I had driven up Mount Washington, and that was a precarious climb in itself. And I can remember standing at the top there, looking down towards, looking down towards Lake of the Clouds Hut, even though we couldn't see it much. It was kind of a lot of cloud up there at the time. And I remember thinking, I'm going to be climbing that next year. And it is a daunting sight. I remember the climb itself wasn't that difficult, but it's the fact that you're doing it, on a through hike that makes it so, it's just such a wonderful thing to think about at the time. After breakfast, Nuke and I set out at about 8:30. And the sun was still beaming down and the mountaintop was still clear. As I say, it's not that difficult a climb, so we were soon about 3/4 of the way there before we found a sitting rock, as Nuke calls them, and stopped for a drink and a snack. And a couple passing by took our photos. Actually, it was one of the best photos of the trip so far. The clouds were starting to move in, so we hurried along and made it to the top about 15 minutes before the clouds engulfed the view. If you've never been up there, it's kind of a tourist trap, obviously. People go up there by the cog railway, or they drive up there, as I say. And there's actually a hiker's place you can go and recharge and store your pack and so on. But we just went to the cafe up there. There's a picture of the sign at the top of Washington, which everybody has to line up for to get their picture taken. But somebody said there's through hikers here, so everybody got out of the way, and Nuke and I got our pictures taken there, which is pretty cool. And we dallied in the cafe, for nearly an hour, maybe a little less, before we'd started the descent to Madison Hut. Now, in my memory, this was a relatively straightforward hike down for a couple of miles. In actuality, of course, it was a 6-mile rock hop all the way down, crossing the cog railway for a bit of light relief. I truly do not recall it being that long. We eventually made it to the hut and woofed down more baked goods before continuing our day, which, by the way, had about 6,000 feet of descent in all, most of which was at the end. I've mentioned the descent down to Osgood Tent Site in the past in the podcast. It is, from my previous hikes, it's probably the most difficult day I've had on trail. And it's just ever downwards. It wasn't quite as bad as my memories was giving me, but really my memory about that next leg was spot on. First though, it was the glorious rock scramble up Mount Madison. My favourite mountain on the trail. It's only short, it only takes about, half an hour to get up there over rock after rock after rock, just clambering yourself up over as a rock scramble. And you get to the top of this pointed mountain and you're right at the very top, looking around, and we still had decent weather to look around with that day, which was great. But as I say, the toughest part of the day was unquestionably the long climb down to the Osgood tent site. And to give you an indication, from Madison Hut, it was only 2.8 miles in total, including the climb up Mount Madison. That Mount Madison one didn't take any time at all. But that 2.8 miles took us 3 hours as we got to Osgood by 6:30. We've been joined by real estate, a good guy we've been seeing recently, doing a section of New Hampshire. And he came along with us. I interviewed him for the pod sitting on the log the following morning, but I'm going to play it after this. Nuke and I set up on a tent pad and engaging a young college guy out for his first ever backpacking trip. He was almost incredulous that an AT thru-hike was a thing. Real estate was on a pad a little further up in the woods and joined us for dinner on our pad. It was one of those kind of really cosy communal feelings, and we spent the rest of the daylight chatting before the darkness closed in. It had been another great day of accomplishment, if I can say that, certainly as far as I was concerned. So Nuke has found us an interview rock. It's normally a sit-in rock where we just sit and eat, but we're having an interview right now, and this is with Ron or Real Estate. Hey Ron, thanks for talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
So you're out here for, in fact you're finishing today, aren't you?
I am finishing today.
And what have you done so far?
Well, I did a section hike that I started in Hanover, New Hampshire, right at the Vermont border, around Dartmouth. And I just finished the Presidential Traverse. And I'm heading to 16 near Pinkham Notch.
Yeah, and you've done this apparently in the snow, which strikes me as bloody lunatic. So tell us what it's like in the snow.
So just to clarify, I haven't done the exact route that I just did in the snow. Right. But my friends and I will come up and we'll find a suitable base camp.
Sure.
We've base camped in the Great Gulf side. We've base camped on the Randolph side. There's a nice perch lean-to over there, which is perfect to go up and peak bag. Right. And we can leave most of our gear in camp and just kind of go light.
How much snow is there when you've been up there?
It depends. Sometimes there's hardly anything. The first time we came up was in the rain.
All right.
There was still some snow on the ground. But the worst of it was we came up this very trail, the Osgood Trail.
Right.
Straight up over Madison. About halfway up Madison, it was blue sky in front of us, but when you turned around, big black line of clouds behind us, and that was indicative of a nor'easter. So we tried to hightail it up and over Madison to get down in the tree line, but set camp, ended up with 3 feet of snow on us that night and had to dump that off of the tents.
Oh, see, there's nothing about anything you just said there that appeals to me at all. What about yesterday coming down? We came from Lake of the Clouds in the morning, didn't we? Went up and over Washington, down to Madison, then up down to the Osgood tent site. What was that like for you? Because for me, it was just bloody exhausting.
I was great until we hit Madison Hut. So I was in good shape. I just needed to rest because that was about a 7 mile run.
Yeah.
Jackson had a little, dodgy rocks, but beyond that, it was good. But then once we started up and over Madison after a break, which might have been a little too long.
Yes, I think so. Yeah,
going up Madison was great. Coming down, it was no doubt very, very challenging.
Yeah.
Especially after having already done 7 miles. And then doing 3 miles essentially over some steep rocks and
lots of rock hopping.
Tons of rocks. But it was hard. I mean, the bottoms of my feet were killing me.
Right. I wanted to ask you about something you've said to us. This nutrition thing that we're going to be doing with Mike. You've got some powder that you use for, is it slow release cops? Tell us what it is.
Yes, so it's a product made by Scratch, SKRATCH, a company out of Boulder, Colorado. And I forget the actual compound in there, but it's a long carbohydrate chain The drink mix is called, I think it's called super high carb drink mix.
Right.
It used to be known under another name, Power Fuel or something like that. But I take that. I brought this heavy powder with me,
Right.
and I mix a substantial amount in the morning, about 24 ounces or so.
Right.
It's 400 calories, but that long chain carbohydrate seems to kick in well after 2 hours. So as soon as you feel really gassed,
It almost like
You
gives
can-
you an injection of energy.
yeah, it's almost, think about it as an IV drip of energy,
Right.
because you'll be able to bound up some slopes that you don't know where you got the energy
Yeah,
after feeling
I
gassed.
don't bound. Anyway.
Well,
Yeah.
Comparatively, right?
Right.
Compared to when you're feeling gassed, you just feel a lot more energy.
But you actually feel it happening, do you? When it just suddenly kicks in.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't suddenly kick in. It's almost imperceivable, and you only notice it as things start to feel a little bit easier.
So you maintain a level of energy which you wouldn't otherwise. Because
Right.
we take a lot of, Nuke eats a lot of sugary candy and so on. I eat some nuts and so on, but I definitely feel after a while it goes away. You're saying this stuff kind of kicks in to keep that level higher.
It does.
Right.
In addition, so that's merely partly for hydration, but partly for the carbohydrate intake.
Right.
Yet, every, let's say, 30 to 60 minutes, I'm eating something.
Right.
Even if it's a bite of a bar and I put it
right,
back
right.
in my
Yeah,
pouch,
yeah.
I'm still constantly eating. At times, if I can take protein in, I'll do that as well, because
Sure,
that's
sure.
going to satiate a little bit. But all of those things, I think, combined help to sustain energy.
It's interesting. It's funny because we've been talking about it, and now suddenly you mentioned this as well. So you're leaving us today. You're going away, leaving the woods behind. You're going to miss it.
I am totally going to miss it. And I was going to stay in the Madison hut last night. There was just no room, but I'm glad I had a final night in my tent.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. Well, thanks for talking to us. Appreciate it. Really nice to meet you.
All right, thanks.
Cheers, buddy. So we've slowed down, and though I know that Nuke was hoping for an earlier finish, I'm not sure what else we could have done in the terrain to get in those miles. The hiking is, as expected, awesome, and it is, as expected, bloody challenging, but it just goes to show how difficult planning ahead can be, especially with an eye on a finish date at Katahdin. I'll see you next time.